remember listening to your podcast and Pomp back in whenever it started, 2018, 2019, and you were on this big campaign of get off zero, get the institutions off zero. And it was just like this very measured thing of like, if we can just convince a marginal amount of institutions to get 1% of their base, their investments, and put it into Bitcoin, that has just massive implications to the price of Bitcoin, just because the 1% is a lot. And now here we are in 2024, and like now 1% is actually like 3%. Like institutions are now allocating 3%. And so for a long time, we could not get off zero at all. Institutions were stuck at zero. Now they're just skipping to 3%, which I think is very related to this fact that Bitcoin is at all-time highs before the halving. Like it's because of the ETF, right? Like it's because the outside world is now like not thinking that Bitcoin is this crazy thing anymore. Bitcoin is now like civilized. And just an overall theme of like, since the genesis of the Bankless podcast has been one part of like crypto is actually moving more towards society. At the same time, society is also moving more towards crypto. Like these two things are converging, and there kind of seems to be this like hand of Adam, God touching Adam fingertip at the Bitcoin ETF. And that's kind of, to me, like the way to like kind of define this thing. But the thing is, like, you've been advocating for this future. You were the first one. So like, what's it like to actually have been like at the beginning of that arc, like leading people here, and that now actually, is it as powerful as a moment as it seems? Because this has been your campaign since Genesis.
The God and Adam finger touching, that's a fantastic analogy.
Wait, who's God and who's Adam?
Yeah, I don't know.
God is TradFi and Adam is Bitcoin.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You sure it's not the other way around?
Yeah, Larry Finger's pretty powerful.
No, it's definitely that way. Yeah.
So first, I would say, like, I don't think I was the first to be like, oh, the institutions are going to buy this stuff, whatever. I think maybe my very small contribution was I have a small enough brain to come up with like memorable one-liners that people then could go repeat. So like, the marketing of that idea, but definitely there was people before me that were kind of banging the drum. And what I would say in terms of the institutions at the time, what's the Pablo Picasso, I think, line? It's like, good artists borrow, great artists steal. I heard somewhere else that somebody had said like get off zero as a mantra about a different asset class. And I was like, that's amazing. Like, I'm just going to repeat that here and, hopefully it'll resonate. And so really the thought process was just like schmuck insurance, right? I think as what like Chamath has called it, or the idea that like, I think Satoshi early on wrote and said, maybe you should get some just in case it catches on. Like that was really it. It's just like, what is the smallest amount possible that we could get you to break the seal? Because once you break the seal, like, then game on. And so just like, it wasn't like do 1%, right? Which like also could have been the like memorable line, but it was like, just get off zero. Like literally just buy one Bitcoin. It's $3,000 or something, right? Like just one. Now you're a Bitcoin holder. If you're holding it, you're going to pay attention to it. If you're paying attention to it, you can't help but fall down the rabbit hole. And so that was really kind of the idea. Now, I will tell you that I went, and in 2019, I did 120 flights around the world, going and talking to institutions. There was days where I would like fly to a city and I would talk to like 3 institutions in a single day. It wasn't just me, Mark Yusko, Jason Williams. We had a team. Like we were just full court press. There's not that many people who did it. Like,
really?
There were some, but no, I mean, like, I don't know. I'd have to go back and count exactly, but it off the top of my head, maybe we worked with like 10 institutions.
Yeah.
But like, maybe we met with 300 or 400. So like on a percentage conversion basis, like not that high. And so when I always get reminded of that, because to see now what's happening, you have to wonder how much of it was timing. So like they just needed to get familiar with it, and time expiring actually just meant that, hey, the Lindy effect is here and like this isn't going to go away. That had some contribution. 2 is there's probably some element of like they needed time to do the work internally. The third one is you need the people who work in the institutions to become Bitcoiners personally before they then go advocate to convince the institution to be like a Bitcoin holder or an investor. And we can talk about many stories where institutions literally, there's like one person inside the organization, they're the Bitcoiner, they convince their buddy convinces another person, and the next thing you know, it's like half the team is holding Bitcoin or crypto in general, and then they go and they do it as an institution. And then also you needed like a different form factor. Like go on Coinbase was never going to be a thing for an institution because that's just not what they do. We early on had a venture fund, and we told institutions, hey, it's a venture fund. We're going to invest in the equity of these companies, but we're going to buy a little bit of Bitcoin, like 15%, give or take, I think was the first fund. The amount of effort that we had to do in diligence to explain that Coinbase was a qualified custodian that was going to hold the Bitcoin, that was like 80% of the diligence conversation. So even though Coinbase to all of us was like, oh, of course, this is like the safest thing possible. Like, at least we're not on name your external, international exchange. To them, they were like, I never heard of Coinbase. Like, what is that thing? Who owns it? Who's regulating it, et cetera. And so I think that that's like really the confluence of why the institutions finally have started to allocate is like you needed the ETFs to get approved. You needed them to have time. You needed people internally to buy Bitcoin. And then you also, in some weird way, needed them to like have career risk removed by time. And also Paul Tudor Jones bought it. Stanley Druckenmiller bought it. All these people like, I don't know, if they're wrong, then we'll all be wrong together. Like, it's kind of like misery loves company type thing that they all got comfortable and finally just said, yeah, let's hit the bid and let's go buy some.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are looking at this. Just it felt like overnight, suddenly Larry Finks on like CNBC, and he's saying like, yeah, Bitcoin is the future. Here's our Bitcoin ETF. But what they don't realize is there was this confluence of like 6 years plus of effort and infrastructure that need to be built out, and evangelism and like individual brains that had to be like converted and turned onto this. And I'm wondering if you could kind of compare and contrast, right? Because you were on sort of the media circuit as well, I think in like 2017, 2018, that time period where I would see you on like CNBC and like Squawk Box and this kind of thing. And the tone from some of the interviewers sometimes in TradFi was just kind of like, what you have what percent of your net worth in crypto? Like, what are you doing? Like, here's this guy evangelizing about Bitcoin. There was almost like kind of a, I don't know, a smirk in the background of how they used to approach Bitcoin. That is much different now. And some of these same anchors that I see in 2024 actually having arguments with with people like Gary Gensler and people like Jamie Dimon reciting crypto talking points that we used to talk about in 2017, 2018. And I know you've kind of revisited some of those same shows this cycle. What's the difference between last time and this time? Are they taking it more seriously? Has there been a tone difference? Have light bulbs clicked on? Like, give us a sense.
Yeah, I'll tell you a couple stories that probably can highlight this. So the first time that I got asked to go on television, I remember being like, bam, we did it. Like we all made it. We convinced them.
They're going to hear the message and convert.
Of course, like we're geniuses. Like, thank you. We finally, all the work that we've done, 2018, I go on television. They absolutely ripped me a new one. Like, the price. I think we had dropped Bitcoin from 20,000 to like 6,000, right? And they're just teeing off on me. And I remember walking off the set, being like, "Oh, I was the like punching bag.
You're the scapegoat.
We have not made it, guys. Actually, it's the opposite. Like they are laughing at us." So that was kind of
doesn't that just make
one.
sense? As in, because like they're not going to report about it on the way up because they're not invested on it on the way up. And so on the way down, they need to be right. They need to like take a victory lap.
Yeah, on the way up at like late 2017, I think is when they really started to cover it. It's interesting. There's a number of people in crypto today. I could think of Camila Russo. I think also Michael Casey, a couple of others. Like they were working, I think maybe both of them worked at Bloomberg and were actually living or covering currencies in Argentina. Like 2012, 2013. And so they saw Bitcoin earlier. They were some of the first people to write about it from like the traditional mainstream media, whatever. And so there were some people who were like kind of looking in and around it. But then there was like the talking points. And I always like to give Joe Weisenthal a hard time because he wrote a piece in 2013. He was like, Bitcoin's a joke and the picture's like a clown. And then it was at, I don't know, $100 and now it's at 70,000. And so, you had both sides of it. Now, the second story I'll tell you about 2018, 2019 is the second time they invite me on, Kevin O'Leary is on the set. And on the way there, I'm listening to the show. And he starts talking about crypto garbage. Instead of garbage, he said garbage. At least you guys are a little bit above the garbage, but it's still, nonsense. And so to like highlight how these shows sometimes come together is before the show's commercial break, I walk out onto the set and him and I have never met before. I could be somebody who's super nice. I could be a complete asshole. He has no clue. And we start talking about Bitcoin and he says, how much of your dough is in this? And I'm like, more than 50%. And his eyes like fell out of his head. The producer says, 3, 2, 1, we're back to the show. Kevin doesn't wait 2 seconds. He just immediately goes, how much of your dough is in this? Like right on. I say more than 50%. And he just goes on a tirade. I forbid you from doing that. That is insane. And he's like going on and on and on. And so I was like, oh my God, I'm like punching bag number 2. Like this is going to be the difference. Now today, what I will say is if I go on and let's say a crypto kind of skeptic comes on after me, I think that the mainstream journalists / hosts have gotten really good at is they will actually press me, right? So like Andrew Ross Sorkin in a recent segment, he was like, look, I went to South Africa. I talked to a lot of people. No one owns this stuff. Like you guys talk about it being adopted internationally. Like, what do you say? And, I would put folks like that in a camp of they are probably cautiously optimistic. Like they would like to see it work. They actually think it could be a good thing for the world, but they're skeptical by nature and they're journalists. So their job is to ask you questions that push what you think or what you say. And it's not, it's not an opportunity for you to go and do PR, right? And so they're doing the job of the journalist. But then what happens is if, let's say Jamie Dimon comes on, they then flip around on the table and now all of a sudden they're advocating for the opposite of Jamie Dimon's view. So what I think we sometimes as a community get sucked into is like, we're all pro these assets. And so when they push back, we're like, they're so dumb. They don't understand. But if you actually watch when they're pushing against the critics, you have to realize like, no, they're just doing their job. Like they're going to play the devil's advocate to whoever's on the show. There are some hosts, as you guys alluded to, that, they're all in, they own it. Joe Kernan probably being a great example. And so when the hosts start to debate each other about it, I think we all kind of can, laugh and say like, wow, we really, maybe we are here now where we don't even have to like do the debating. We just let them debate for us. So it's night and day difference. But again, it's hard to debate against it if Paul Tudor Jones, Stanley Druckenmiller, Larry Fink, many well-respected, smart people.
To continue leveling up your crypto game, then you need to get on the Bankless newsletter. It's the world's most popular crypto email and is completely free. Just click below to sign up.